Hey guys, my name's Khadroth, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Koyanskaya. Now, again, this one's going to be centering around Koyanskaya of Light, not her counterpart that comes out later, but I am going to be talking to you guys all about her banners and everything that you guys should be considering when approaching her to roll. So, I think one of the big things that people would tell you about Koyanskaya is just that she is a very prolific support. She's very good at helping out Buster units, but I don't think a lot of people would talk to you so much about some of the other applications of Koyanskaya. So I'm going to do my best to kind of go through this with you guys in a more light manner, but also still very in-depth in the fastest possible way I can to not totally bore you to death. So starting off here right at the beginning, Koyanskaya is again going to have 11.6k attack. This is not really that good in the grand scheme of things, but oftentimes when I see something like this, I'm going to point out to you guys that, remember, a servant is not just their attack power. Their attack power is just one of the aspects that helps them deal damage, and it's more the summation of their entire kit that you really need to look at for damage output. Because again, I think you're going to see that Koyanskaya is actually quite capable in the damage department. Now, as we look at her HP here, this is maybe another concern. She only has about 13k HP. This to me is the more real concern with regards to her, because she doesn't really have that hard survival built into her kit as a support, nor does she really have, again, the crazy attack power to offset the fact that she has lower HP for a 5-star. So this to me is a real concern: is do you have the capability to go the distance with Koyanskaya over time? Everybody has a really good shot at 3-turning with her. The problem that you're going to see is, can you put her in a position to be able to last longer than that? And depending on the supports you use alongside of her, the answer to that is yes. But again, it is going to require some at least attention if you plan to go longer than 3 turns. Now, again here, we already see our first really unique aspect to Koyanskaya, as she has the Beast attribute. That is not normal. Again, that is something that is going to definitely help her out with regards to damage, both dealing and taking. It's going to make her a lot more neutral in that regard, and she's not going to have to worry about too many things. Now, looking at her star absorption here, she's got 102 and then 25.5 star generation. Again, these are fairly good, but this is also because she is an assassin, and they happen to dabble in star generation and star absorption in that regard. Now, again, looking at her NP gain rate here, it's also 0.76, which is fairly high. We see a lot of units in the 0.5 range nowadays, so seeing her being at 0.76 means that she's definitely above average for her native NP gain. But Koyanskaya is an AoE Buster unit herself, so you're not getting charge off of her NP in any way, shape, or form in that regard. So you don't worry about, again, this sort of thing for your NP. You're worrying about it for the card counts, the hit counts that are going to be there, and how much Noble Phantasm you're going to be generating from those. And I'll talk about that as we get closer to it. Her NP charge defense here is 4%. Again, a little bit higher than the 3% average across all units, so definitely nice, but nothing too crazy in that regard. Her death rate here is 33%, which is a little bit higher than average. So again, you're going to want to be concerned if you're going up against some sort of boss or enemy that has death procs. But hey, it is what it is. If you have to use her, you're going to use her anyways. So just pay that in mind if you ever do end up having to take her into one of those situations. She is lawful evil, which again can be used for either buffing or exploiting if you're going up against her. And then she is female gendered. She is animal characteristic servant, costume owning, demonic beast, divine, humanoid, riding, servant, 7-night servant, and weak to Enema Elish. Out of these, there's a couple that I really want to highlight. One is the animal characteristic servant, which is the servant that her counterpart, Koyanskaya of Darkness, actually utilizes. So the fact that she also has that characteristic is really good for her. And then also the fact that she is demonic is going to be a very common, easily exploitable niche for people, including one of the better ways to deal with her would be to use someone like Murasaki caster against her, as again, she is a caster who is anti-demonic, and this is an assassin that is demonic. Now, again, you also have Demonic Beast that can help you out later on for like Tunguska and stuff like that. But honestly, you also have Divine right here, which is another easily exploitable niche. However, out of all of this, the big one that I actually want to point out to you guys is the fact that she is costume owning. costume owning matters whenever you're dealing with Miss Crane. So this does mean that you could utilize Miss Crane in order to be able to easily get stars for her to be able to charge to get to her NP and fire that off in order to rotate the party and give some buffs to someone. Crane is a really nice, useful sort of like tertiary support, as she can be someone that is going to allow you to rotate without having to use plug suit or in addition to the plug suit. So it's going to allow you to move the party without killing anyone, without having to utilize your cooldown there or anything like that. So the fact that Koyanskaya has, again, costume owning is just going to allow her to be a really nice support that can function in conjunction with, again, Miss Crane. So really, really nice one there. Now looking at, obviously, her deck here, you guys can see that she is double buster, double quick. And single arts here. This is pretty close to our standard assassin deck. Obviously, there are some assassins out there that have triple quick, but you're not going to see that in Koyanskaya's case. The good part about this is all of her hit counts are stellar. Again, her 4 hit counts on her quick and arts cards are really, really nice. And then you have normal on the buster and the extra. So again, nothing too bad there. But the thing I'm going to point out is she has the 2 quick cards here, which is going to help her out with sort of setups that could maybe be utilized with, I don't know, say Summer Scotty down the line, or again, just for needs where you might need to actually have stars generated. Now, I am going to say that that will be fulfilling her basic role as an assassin rather than as a support, but at the end of the day, I think you're going to see that in a lot of Koyanskaya uses and setups that stars tend to not be an issue for other reasons. But again, the fact that her arts card is 4 hit in conjunction with that NP gain rate means that it is a very well-performing arts card, which is exactly what you want since you only have 1 of it. Now, again, that is her deck there, so let's go into her actual skills here. This first skill is the big skill that sets everything up for Koyanskaya, especially with regards to the new buster systems that we have coming out. And again, I'm going to tell you guys, I have a nice guide that I produced back in March talking about the systems involving Koyanskaya and Oberon and how they change things. Highly recommend giving that a watch because I go through every single unit that had been released prior to that point. I believe up to this point, really only like Tiamat has come out since then that I don't really have on that list. And again, I'm going to tell you that Tiamat will work really well in this system as well. So this is a really, really good thing to explore, but the big thing that is the game changer right here is not only does she have a block 50 charge kind of like Scotty does, but she ends up having the cooldown reduction of 2. And I actually pointed to this when she first came out and I said this was genius on behalf of the devs, that they actually over time had designed Buster very balanced, that all of the cooldowns sort of functioned the way that they need to, and you didn't really have any sort of huge outlier for units that had such low cooldowns that they were going to break the system by virtue of this coming into the game. So again, this is going to allow some Buster units to be able to, again, double up their skills. It's going to allow you to either on turn 1 or 2 pop the skill, and then by turn 3 pop it again. So, you know, skills like Charisma that, you know, there may be party-wide buffs, you can be able to utilize that a second time around and get another stack of it. So it's really, really good for sort of scaling the damage capability of a unit. The thing that I see sort of misconstrued is I see a lot of people just go for sort of Koyanskaya as a default, when there are actually times that Oberon might actually benefit the unit better. That is, instead of having, like, say, double Koyanskaya and Oberon, it might actually be better to have Koyanskaya and double Oberon instead for the unit. And a lot of that boils down to situations like, are you facing a man-traded enemy? Or again, does your ally, the unit that you're buffing so much, have the capability of actually doubling up on some of their own personal steroids? Something that they can really get a lot of use out of with regards to this cooldown reduction. So that's really going to depend. But again, I do think this is an amazing skill, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more as we start looking at the cooldowns, because this is the big reason that whenever I go through Buster units with you guys, that I start pointing out the cooldowns on them, is because this matters. And the way that this system sort of works is any unit that has a 5-turn or less cooldown at this point can functionally pop their skill on back-to-back turns with double Koyanskaya setup. any unit that has a 6-turn cooldown can pop their skill on turn 1 and have it back for turn 3. And any unit that has a 7-turn or 8-turn cooldown can still function in the system, but this is going to require probably some sort of other additional means of cooldown reduction. That could be something like a pairing like with Ibuki Berserker, or again like Maid Alter, someone that has cooldown reduction that they can provide, or taking something like the Atlas Academy Mystic Code that also has 2 turns of cooldown reduction in its kit. So either one of those can provide you the capability of getting back. But then anyone that pretty much has 9 turns or more, you're probably not getting that cooldown back within 3 turns, no matter what you do. So that's the easy way to think about this sort of system. And again, it's really, really strong, but that is why you kind of see the cooldown on Koyanskaya's own skill here is 8 turns. They don't really want you getting back to this cooldown very easily. And there are ways that you can do it, but it's pretty much going to involve Atlas in most of those situations, or just by simply saying, hey, look, I maybe don't need to get back to this skill for her own purposes. Maybe I'm going to use some sort of hybrid setup where you have multiple damage dealers handling different waves rather than just one devoted damage dealer handling all the waves. But still, it is a very, very nice, very powerful skill, and it is what ultimately sets her up. Now, as we look to the second skill here, you guys can see that she has Aptitude for Slaughter Man, and this is going to increase one ally's damage against man-traded enemies for 3 turns. Again, it's allies damage against human traded enemies, and then man attribute. I got that mixed up real quick there. So human is a trait that often is just not as good as humanoid. Almost all your enemies that you fight and face in the game are humanoid in some way, shape, or form. Whereas human is restricted to a select group of NPCs a lot of the times, pretty much stuff like pirates or Roman soldiers. It is a very small group by comparison against humanoid. So human, while having the ability to increase damage here against humans by 50%, tends to not be that big of a deal. You end up not really seeing this utilized other than maybe for like trash enemies in between waves and stuff like that. So this one particular aspect's not that good, but hey, it may pay off for you in certain times, so it's better to have it than not. But the second one here, the man attribute, this is actually again going to apply to a lot of the bosses and servants that you're going to be fighting. Most of them have one of the 5 attributes that are out there, and again, man and sky and earth tend to be the main 3 attributes, with star and beast being the outliers that you rarely see. So this is going to encompass roughly 1/3 of the units that you're going to be fighting against with regards to bosses. And that's why this is a really, really powerful thing to have in her kit. This is a targeted skill that's going to increase people's damage against, yes, human fodder enemies, but also, again, man attribute enemies by 50%. So it's a just really strong power mod that you have right there on both of those. And then it's also going to grant an effect that basically allows them, whenever attacking with a Buster card on whoever the target was, whenever they use their Buster card, they are going to charge their NP gauge by, again, up to 10% here. So that is another really strong aspect. If you guys have ever used Muramasa with his skill, very similar aspect to that. It's just going to be, hey, even though a Buster card doesn't normally return charge to you, this is going to allow it to. It's going to allow you to, every single time you hit Buster, get up to 10%. And remember, you can have this activate twice, basically, with double Koyanskaya. So if you're using a double Koyanskaya setup to buff a unit, there you go. That's 20% charge every time they use a Buster card. It is a really, really strong, capable skill. So it is awesome just for that alone right there. And if you thought the skill couldn't get any better, it does. It's also a crit star bomb of up to 20 stars. Now, I've actually talked about this a lot with regards to the Buster systems, that it's kind of funny now at this point in time that Buster doesn't care too much about stars because it has so many stars. If you were taking Koyanskayas and Oberons into your group, a lot of the time you are swimming in stars on the turns that you actually need it, because Koyanskaya has 20 stars on this skill, another Koyanskaya would potentially have another 20 stars, and then certainly Oberon also has 20 stars on his 50% charge skill. So there is up to 60 stars in any one of these given comps, either double Koyanskaya and Oberon or double Oberon and Koyanskaya, that are just floating around freely and able to be used and popped at whatever time that you would need them. that's pretty nutty. And this means that you can manufacture crits when you need to, or again, maybe it's just one of those deals where, hey, you low rolled with the NP and you need to finish the enemy off. Boom, there you go, easy crits. So this sort of thing, especially in conjunction with stuff like Mighty Chains coming on down the line later, makes the scalability of a lot of your units a lot better. It allows you to really mop up even at lower NP levels. And that's, again, going back to that first skill. Something that is really, really nice here about this is, yeah, the ability to be able to double up a unit's skills and get them again just sort of stretches the firepower of that unit even more. So that's, again, kind of why we see down the line here with, you know, Koyanskaya, with Oberon, with them coming into the game, that they had sort of power crept themselves with regards to the damage output that players had, especially at lower NP levels. And this is why they've started to do things like the Super Recollection quests, the, again, 90++ nodes and that sort of stuff. They really needed some reason to have more NP levels, because at the end of the day, a lot of people were just able to clear the game with, you know, a nice easy setup of meta supports and then, you know, an NP1 of their favorite unit or something like that. So this is a big chunk of that. But yeah, this is also just going to help on the carding end. And so this skill is extremely strong in and of itself, and it is all on a 6-turn cooldown. So if you are using her within her own system, you would be able to pop this on turn 1 and turn 3 for herself. Now, the third skill here is also great. It is a targetable buster up of 3 turns of 50%. That right there would be considered strong. That's, you know, pretty equivalent to the way Merlin buffs. It's pretty equivalent to part of Oberon's third skill. So it is a really, really strong buff right there on the outset. But then it also has the ability to increase their critical damage of buster cards for 3 turns, as well as the critical star absorption of buster cards for 3 turns. So it is 50% buster crit, as well as 5,000% buster absorption. So this is really strong. This is going to make it so that whenever you star bomb, you've already buffed this unit now with Buster Up. You've already allowed them to get all their steroids back again, potentially. And now any Buster card of theirs that appears will soak all the stars at that kind of crazy absorption level. So it is really, really strong and synergistic the way her kit works. And again, this one is also all on a 6-turn cooldown, so you're going to be able to get back to it on turn 3 as long as you popped it on turn 1. So that right there is, again, going to be another strong factor. So again, you guys can see already just from the outset all of the considerations that I've talked about here just with her skills. And that's just that. We still have more to talk about. So she does have Writing B as her passive here. This is going to help her quick card performance even more for star generation and for damage. And then she has Independent Action EX for 12% extra critical damage for herself. Then Independent Manifestation here for critical damage, instant kill resistance, and mental debuff resistance. Again, don't get confused here. This is not stun. This is, in fact, terror that she has immunity to, not the other one, but still really, really, or sorry, not immunity. I said that wrong. Resistance to. So again, it is really nice to have things like this, so that way she can't be debilitated, she can't be stopped from what she's doing. And again, she still ends up with Shapeshift A here, that is going to further increase her arts card performance by 10%. We already talked about how she has a really good arts card there, even though she only has 1. So then she also gets the ability to increase her critical star generation rate by 10% on top of that. And again, we already know she's an assassin, so she's already pretty good at that. So even more right there. And then basically Goddess Metamorphosis right here for just additional 20% NP damage. How would you like 20% NP damage as a passive that you always have? And yes, if you're wondering, this passive can be doubled by Oberon's third skill. So it is just really, really strong in and of itself. Now, looking at her Append skills here, obviously I think one of the big ones that you're going to want is going to be mana loading. Allow me to explain why. Basically, if you happen to be using Koyanskaya as a damage dealer, this is a really, really nice thing to do. There also are some situations where you maybe have either a hybrid setup, or you maybe go, hey, look, if I could manage to get Koyanskaya's NP off, it maybe helps out with damage, or it maybe gets someone else a rank of overcharge, or it maybe helps out with charge, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But so yeah, I think the mana loading is the first one you really want to go with here. The anti-archer attack damage aptitude, I'm going to tell you, is probably not that good unless you're, you know, Koyanskaya is your favorite unit. You're using her prolifically as both a damage dealer and a support, and you say, hey, look, you know, there may be times that I'm facing like a man-traded archer and I have a really powerful Koyanskaya, so I can use this. So I think this is still the weakest of the three. I would probably go with your extra attack finesse over that. But again, if it's up to you depending on the amount of coins that you have and whether or not you actually like the prospects of that third skill more. So I would tell you mana loading, then extra attack finesse, then the third skill as a distant third. But again, just depends on your priorities as a player. So as we get to the Noble Phantasm here, it's an 8-hit Buster AoE Noble Phantasm. Now remember, Koyanskaya is a limited unit. You're going to have to wait for her banners to come back on. But still, this is a really, really strong and powerful NP. It increases attack by 20% for 1 turn, activating first. So remember that attack power that we were talking about earlier and how it seemed low for a 5-star, especially for someone that you wanted to be a damage dealer? Well, there you go. It's not necessarily going to matter with all the steroids that she has in her kit, including that passive skill that we talked about earlier. So this is all going to activate before damage, and then she deals damage. And then on top of that, she has a guaranteeable NP drain. NP drain works differently than other debuffs. It is not considered an actual debuff. It will just drain unless the enemy has some sort of bullshit challenge-specific mechanic to stop that. So again, this one will succeed 100% of the time, and so it can always be counted on, which is nice. Again, she hasn't had an NP interlude or anything like that, so you're looking at only 300% modifier right there on Buster. But then her overcharge effect right here is charging the party's NP gauge by 10% after an NP. So this is where I was talking about, again, having the mana loading, being able to get to an NP might allow you to set another unit up or even herself for another NP later on, depending on the circumstances of the setup of your party composition. So this could be really, really nice. This could be actually a small little boon that, you know, you could actually rely upon depending on the circumstances. So you will start to see a lot of hybrid comps involving Koyanskaya as a buffing unit, but then someone else that also maybe handles like the opening wave or something like that, so that they can sort of contribute even more to the charge by virtue of this overcharge effect. So it is really, really good there. But again, I'm going to say that that is a strong thing here. Now, it doesn't stop there, though. You also end up having the bond skill. Sorry, the bond craft essence, not skill, for Koyanskaya. And obviously, it's going to take you to bond 10 before you get this, but it's really, really nice as it increases party damage against human and man attribute enemies by 15%. So it is an additional power mod. She does have to have it equipped and be on the field with it, but hey, if you're maybe just going, you know, I don't necessarily have some other way of increasing damage output and I know the enemy is man traded, there you go. That would be a really, really solid addition. So again, I think it's worthy of pointing these out, especially on our support units where we maybe don't care about getting them to their NP. I would say if you're going to use her for an actual damage dealer, don't use this Bond CE. But if you're not going to, if you're going to use her only in a support capacity, Bond CE might be nice depending on the circumstances that you're up against. Now, again, let's talk her actual banners, because I just mentioned to you earlier that she's limited. You guys already know that she's going to be coming up right here with the anniversary. We have the panel on July 2nd here, so I would expect to see her maybe coming in on like the 3rd or something like that, right after the panel goes live. But what do you do if you're someone that you maybe don't have the courts, you maybe don't get her, you maybe don't have enough to go to pity, or maybe you're just holding off because you want to get, say, Oberon, because you know Oberon doesn't come back in 18 months. So maybe if your priority lies on him, and then you go, oh man, I really want Koyanskaya, but I can't get her this banner, when's your next banner? So it's going to be right here in January of next year. This is going to happen shortly after Tunguska. So again, keep that in mind. If you guys are rolling Koyanskaya of Dark at New Year's, that's going to be a big issue for you. But otherwise, hey, look, you have another quick opportunity to be able to roll her somewhere that is outside of this current gauntlet of really desirable servants for a lot of people. But maybe that doesn't work for you either. Well, then you would be waiting even longer, and at that point, you would be waiting the full duration pretty much that someone would have to wait if they don't get Oberon. So that is another thing to consider here, as her next banner isn't until December of next year, during sort of, it's not quite Road to 7, this is more like the Lost Belt 7 support aid campaign. And so we actually see a couple of our support units come back in that are really desirable, and Koyanskaya is one of them. So you guys can see mid to late December of next year, you guys will have a third opportunity to roll Koyanskaya. And as of right now, those are her 3 banners that are currently released. She hasn't had another one. But again, let that inform your decision making, let that inform your planning, and roll accordingly depending on whatever your decision is. As to regards to her NP and basically how much damage she's going to do with it, we're going to go look here at the NP damage list. Now I have this sorted and filtered for, again, sort of sorted by NP1, filtered to AoE, but do keep in mind with regards to this NP damage list that it shows only neutral numbers, so not effective numbers. This is not Koyanskaya's numbers if she were, say, up against a rider, right? Those would be even better. Those would be 2 times effective. But this is neutral. However, it does include all of her own self buffs at rank 10. So it assumes maximum skills and it assumes all of her own self buffs. It does not include craft essences or, again, external buffs from some other support onto her. So just keep that in mind. This is basically a unit under their own power. That being said, right here, you guys can see Koyanskaya is not too shabby here at NP1, coming in at about 25k for an AoE assassin, which again is someone that is at least close to the top at this point. I've seen a lot of people talk about Gray and the sort of capability that she's going to have into the future. She is a welfare that's going to be coming back next year. So again, if you're concerned about having a good, strong AoE assassin, you will have another opportunity to acquire a good welfare. And Gray is someone that is going to be able to 3-turn in the Koyanskaya system based off of her buff. She ends up getting an NP interlude here that really helps her out. And then again, you're going to be guaranteed NP5 of her. Plus it gives her 10% charge on the back end of her NP. So that allows her to function kind of similar to Salter in the way she does in these buster systems. So you could basically start her out at worst at a 60% CE and still be able to 3-turn. But again, I think this is a consideration for some people, but if you're going after Koyanskaya for obvious support reasons, then you're not going to care too much about damage. That being said, there are still obvious scenarios where she can definitely sort of either have one of her power mods or double up on them, and you can see that is drastically going to improve her damage output. So against man-traded enemies right here, you can see Koyanskaya is going to be doing pretty solid at 35.9k even at NP1, which would be more than Gray at NP5 against non-undead units. And then similarly, that would be enough to easily put her on top of anyone else outside of niche. So Koyanskaya just comes into the game and immediately is a very usable assassin in that regard. She might not be the best one, especially if you have other units that you have higher MP levels of, but she certainly could be a serviceable option for you, especially if you want to roll for multiple copies. And I do think you will see some people do that. There is some, again, logic to it. I've talked about this before, that sometimes you want supports, especially the big meta ones that you're going to be taking into challenge quests sometimes. Sometimes you want them at NP2, and the reason for this is just simply to be able to charge their gauge over the 100% mark, just in case you end up going up against a unit that has, say, Drain. That could be really useful, but this is more of a usefulness, I would argue, for refund-based units, for units that, again, are going to be looking at, say, dealing with a situation by getting to their NP slowly over time. Less so for buster units in these new systems that, again, don't care about the makeup of nodes too much. They don't care about refund because they're going to brute force everything with charge. So in that regard, I don't think Koyanskaya is someone that you really have to get for that reason. If you're going after NP2, it's more or less just going to be for the very nice bump up in damage. Now, with regards to what craft essences you should use on Koyanskaya, you can actually start Koyanskaya out with the sort of old faithful here, basically, as Black Grail. Black Grail is a really powerful, obvious craft essence that, again, it just has insane scalability. But in order to be able to pull something like this off, you're probably going to see it more used in hybrid setups where you've got Koyanskaya taking out a wave, maybe another Koyanskaya taking out a wave, and then maybe like an Oberon taking out a wave. That is actually possible. That is a comp that can be done, and again, I talk about it in my Buster System guide. But so you can start her out this way, but don't expect to be 3-turning with that Koyanskaya just using Black Grail. You might be able to take out 2 waves that way, but taking out all 3 is going to be difficult for her. She's only a 50% charger in that regard. But still, it is an interesting thing. Now, again, you may be looking at something more like, okay, well then what if I start her out as a 50% charge? Well, certainly stuff like aerial drive can be really useful to you. You guys on NA are going to get another crack at this at basically in October with the new Halloween event. It will bring back old Halloween welfare craft essences, of which aerial drive is one of them. And I highly recommend you get it because it is a 50% charge CE that, again, is all attack scaling and gives you Buster and NP damage. That is just going to be really solid for you. Now, next year, during the Bunyan collab event, you're going to get another welfare craft essence that's all attack scaling. And this one's also 50%, but instead of having 10% Buster card effectiveness, it has 8%, so it loses a little bit there, but it gains basically 5% extra more NP damage. And again, NP damage is something that you're really going to want in the long term here, because whenever you're using Oberon, his 3rd skill, that NP damage boost effect, it doubles any source of NP damage. So having this means that his buffing is going to work and be more synergistic with it. So again, having a little bit of an extra edge there is just going to be solid for you. So both of those craft essences are good. But maybe if you don't have the Bond CE yet, maybe you're a more veteran player. And again, I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to be salty that they can't get access to this, but Ox Demon King can actually be a really solid tool to put on a Buster support unit. And the reason why is because this craft essence basically just allows you to increase the party's Buster performance for 3 turns by 15%. So if you have nothing else to put on a support and you manage to be an old enough account to have this, it's a really solid craft essence. But again, this one came from back in Journey to the West, so if you weren't around for its initial run or its rerun, you didn't get access to this craft essence. It is a really powerful one, and I have used it pretty hilariously in certain sort of meme challenges to really amp damage. But again, it is a really strong one if you manage to be lucky enough to have it. Hopefully one day they will sort of main interlude this or put it in a shop somewhere for us to be able to purchase. That would certainly be appreciated. But again, it is one of those deals where they have never released anything else like it, and so it is just a nice sort of supplement in addition to in sort of like reserve if you don't maybe have a Bond CE instead. So again, I do think this is a really solid craft essence. But just overall talking about Koyanskaya here, like I said, you don't have to roll Koyanskaya right now. You can certainly wait the 6 months to roll her. But I think holistically looking at this, Koyanskaya is a good enough unit that every single account should be looking at her and determining whether or not they wish to roll on her. She is that good that you're going to want her regardless. If you don't get her here, it's not the end of the world, but it's certainly one of those deals where you should try to get her eventually. That is my advice to you guys, and I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I weren't telling you that. So again, Oberon's a really strong unit. I do recommend going for him over her, but it is entirely possible that we don't have the overlap. I talked about that in one of my recent PSA videos. Go check that out. So you may not have the ability to sort of see if you have the chance to roll Oberon and still go for Koyanskaya. You may have to make a hard choice for those of you guys that are operating on a budget. So again, let me know what you guys think about Koyanskaya. How many NP copies are you going to roll for? I'll be curious to read your comments, and I will see you for the next one.